Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 187th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And I'm really pleased to say that a guest that we had on before who was really well received, Aelwyn Pugh, has come back to join us. Thank you, Aelwyn. How are you?
Very well, very well. And you?
Yeah, I'm okay. I had my hair cut this morning. I was all a bit tense this morning. Am I going to get here in time? And then you phoned to say, "Oh, I want to get online to make sure everything's lined up
Well, just
properly."
add to the tension. Yes, that helps.
How are you, Stan?
I'm fine. It's birthday day today,
Yeah.
daughter and grandson's birthday, but one's ill, so it might not happen.
Oh well. Well, it's a sunny morning here in Manchester, and there's been quite a lot happening in
You should
not.
say South Manchester, Frank.
Oh yeah, South. Oh, is it raining
Definitely
in
not sunny
Salford?
here.
The quite a lot happening in education at the moment, and it truly is the government that keeps on giving. So we're not just as a warning, we're not going to talk about lanyards. Okay, so lanyards is not part of the discussion today. Neither is the requirement that you need to put your music plan up onto your school website by September using a template provided by the government. I have to say, when does that stop? Music today, PE to, well, there is probably a need to put a PE plan up on a website somewhere, but technology, computer science, I don't know, French, whatever it is, we're starting with music. I'm sure it won't end there. Neither are we even going to venture down the new sex education guidance that we've all been sort of perusing. But we've got quite a lot of other things to talk about. So, Alwyn, before we start, there just may be one or two people who don't know who you are. So I wondered if you'd just give us a short introduction as to who you are and what you're doing.
Right. Well, I'm retired. I'm pursuing what some people have described as the longest coffee break in history, and I intend to keep it like that. Having worked for almost 50 years, I think I've done my bit. I've contributed my money to the exchequer. I'm getting it back now. And I'm enjoying my retirement. I was involved in education in various ways for almost 50 years. I taught in primary and secondary schools in the state and independent sector. I was in teacher education. I was in local authority doing a whole variety of things, school improvement, being responsible for music, et al. And then in 2000, I was released from that and became an HMI. And I stayed put until the arrival of the pandemic when I became ill, and I retired because I was so fed up with the way that HR couldn't manage to differentiate between somebody who had had only 2 days illness and somebody who was swinging the lead. So I thought, I'm not going to add to my heart problems by fighting them yet again. And it wasn't fun anymore. I'd fought them for such a long
No,
time.
but one of the things, though, Alwyn, when you give a summary of your career, and I think this is something that when you were on before, a colleague said that, listening to Aelwyn Pugh is like listening to an HMI. I mean, I think that please take that as a massive compliment that just the experience that you had, the range of experience that you had before you became an HMI,
Mhm.
that is really quite a powerful sort of potion, isn't it? It's
Mm.
adding to the mix. It's adding to your understanding about the breadth of experiences around education and what it all looks like, and how it all interconnects with each other.
And
Uh,
I never led anything other than leading a service in a local authority. So I always used to compare myself with my grandfather, who was in Gallipoli. So his view of what Churchill was like was very much influenced by having been at the receiving end of the man's stupidity. And similarly, my father was in the North Africa campaign and had an equally low opinion of generals. Not that I'm saying, of course, that I have a low opinion of the people who led me, but I can't think of anybody who did manage to lead.
But I think, yeah, it's, yeah, it's something around, yeah, I do worry a little bit about people getting into inspection with quite narrow experience. That's, I think, at the heart of it for me. And I was
I agree.
lucky that when I joined HMI, I had some experience, but part of the induction was about increasing that range of awareness of the things that happen in education in this country. You know,
I'm laughing at your reference to induction. Um, I had no induction into HMI, literally
oh
none.
dear,
I was simply,
what year did you join, Aelwyn?
I joined in 2001.
Yeah, that's me as
We
well.
joined the same year.
Yeah,
But the week before, I was supposed to be joining on the 25th of April or something of that sort. And I was told that there was a conference the previous week. So would I please leave my job a week earlier, which caused all kinds of problems. Then I was simply thrown into a conference because the following week I was going straight into
right,
it.
into inspection.
I had none of those preparations. I was
Right,
told that wouldn't lead an inspection of a local authority for over a year. A term and a half later, I was told I was leading my first inspection, and my first inspection was leading the inspection of Bedford. And I did the setup meeting on 9/11, and by the time I went in there, the chief executive had been made HMCI. So my first,
of course, yeah, yeah,
so
it
my first
was.
inspection was inspecting my boss.
I think one of the things though that probably says a lot though, the fact that you survived it, but also the fact that before you went into being HMA, you had done an awful lot of stuff, hadn't you?
Yeah,
You'd been around a little bit,
I certainly had.
yeah. Whereas I think mine had been a sort of very, into headship, couple of headships, get inspected, we had the year together, Stan, and then did some inspection. But the range of experience you had, I needed more. I
Mm.
didn't understand some of the stuff. I'd never visited a secure unit. I'd never, I'd never checked out what what was then called ITE, but whatever it was called then,
Mm.
teacher education. I didn't even understand, how it worked and what have you. So all of that was quite important to me.
Mm.
Stan, what are you going to say?
I was just going to say, but there used to be, and I hate talking about the past as if it's some
Mm,
golden time, but to be an HMI, to plan a career that led to being an HMI, you had to put all those experiences into a plan somehow. And I know for many people, it was, I'm at this stage now, oh, I might go into HMI. But I remember thinking, even as a very young teacher, that the career plan was teaching, leading the school, do some local authority advisory, and then HMI was a career path that
mm.
I considered. I obviously failed.
No, no,
I didn't do
no,
the
no,
last
no, don't view it that way at all, Stan. I don't,
Well, it changed, didn't it? At one
yeah,
stage, HMI was the pinnacle, but then it became somewhere you just moved through because there
yeah,
was so much better money to be made in other parts of education and so
yeah.
on, and people were encouraged to think along those lines.
yeah. I think so. To this day, it's still the proudest moment of my life, my working life.
Mm.
You know, and I've still got on my wall here the Privy Council statement. The because in those days HMI were appointed by the Queen in
Mm.
effect through the Privy Council, and so there's my name is on a list with about 8 or 9 others, of which John Gornall is one on this list. But that was for the September intake, and yours would have been for the April
That's right.
intake. So that's why it's not on my list. So actually, Aelwyn was certainly was an HMI much longer than I was, and started before me as well.
And also, my name went to the Privy Council long before I started for some reason. They never sent me a certificate.
So you've been living as a fraud, HMI.
Absolutely, yes. It's been all been revealed. I've been made not only to pay back what I've been overpaid, but also fined for it. And because I've been looking after the cat, I'll be charged for that as well, no doubt, by this government.
Oh dear. Right, well, let's get on with the chat. Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I know you said we weren't going to talk about the sex ed bit, but what struck me about the whole debacle with that yesterday was the lack of evidence when we're supposedly moving into an evidence-based approach to education, or we're supposed to be in an evidence-based approach, and some of the things I just, well, I can't believe that some of the things that were said have ever gone on in schools in the UK. I don't think any 9-year-old's been told about 70 something different genders. And I don't know, I've not been in schools the last 12 months or so, as many as I used to, but I'm absolutely certain that's just something that doesn't happen. So I wondered whether we should start some legislation to ban things that don't happen in schools. So we can build up a whole list of things that should somebody decide. For instance, flat Earth. Should we stop schools teaching about the flat Earth?
Well,
And should there be
perhaps there should be a
legislation
plan put on a website also
to
forcing you
say
to
why
make
you want
clear.
to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the other thing, which is slightly, I'm saying it as a joke, but there is something underneath it. That the reason that the secretary said yesterday that these things shouldn't be taught is they are contested. And afterwards, I thought there's a lot contested in the Bible. So do we stop that because it's contested, or do we ban it? Or that's just, it takes the argument to the extreme. I accept. But you can't just say we're not allowing teachers to teach about this because it's contested. Otherwise, I mean, we'd still be thinking the Earth, there's some move around the Earth, wouldn't we, in those cases, and we'd still be teaching it. I just leave it to the teachers. I have absolute confidence in the teachers in the UK that they do not do things like it's been reported. And I noticed that the secretary also said, laughingly, well, don't think I've been in the classroom and observed this. I haven't sat in a classroom and observed it. It's reports we've had, and parents and teachers. So the teachers were asking for more clarity. That's not what they've done. The reports, I assume, are from, I don't know.
Yeah.
The press taking things, and we'll be talking next about children identifying
It's
as
a
animals.
diversion as well, isn't it? I mean, all of this happened. I think it happened to take away from Labour's big announcement, was it yesterday,
Yeah,
about
probably.
their pledges. All of these things are all lined up, as a bit of a diversion. And it gives you a sense, doesn't it? The fact that she was so poorly prepared that it felt as though this was something that will get this out. This will cause a bit of a stir. It'll fill a few pages, and it'll diminish, the message of the opposition. Yeah,
But not
I
only
agree.
with schools, Frank, I think.
No, I
I
know.
think it damages the credibility of schools. And to say, well, we're telling teachers that children of 9 shouldn't be have any sex education. It sounded what she was saying. And you think, well, there are girls at 9 that need some
Yeah,
education,
yeah,
9 years old. So what are we going to do?
yeah,
Is a teacher breaking some kind of law by
yeah.
dealing with a child who needs some education?
I think it talked about biological elements being taught. So in effect, I mean, going back to, I'm not wanting to go back to the year 6 discussion, about sex education, but actually it's more around gender identity and things like that obviously the government got hung up on. And I mean, I just find they've sort of, in a way, trying to. I mean, I don't understand their concern about it. Don't get me wrong, but if they have, what they've done is they've swept everything up in it.
Yeah.
Rather than address that issue, if they've got an issue with that, they need to engage with. I would have thought it'd be good to engage with the profession to make sure that they have a deep understanding of what's going on. And clearly they can't do that because they probably will end up with evidence suggesting this isn't a big problem, but they want it to be a big
Well,
problem, you know?
they didn't have the evidence, did they?
No, no,
She was asked what the evidence was. It was just waffle again.
yes,
But the irony is, I only saw a very, very brief interview, and she talked about we need to emphasize facts. And I thought, well, this is like something out of Hard Times, isn't it? I looked it up this morning when it says facts alone are wanted in life. Plant nothing else and root out everything else. You can only form the minds of reasoning animals upon facts. And she's quite Dickensian, but then so much of what's coming out is,
yes,
and it worries me that the notion of education being to do with thinking and also to do with emotions doesn't come into this. I can see where they're coming from to a certain extent, but we can't simply sweep all this away and say we're not going to touch it on the basis of some dubious evidence, because there are young people who are committing suicide because of their difficulties with their identity and so on. So it worries me.
yeah, yeah. Right. Aelwyn, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, it was again something from the Secretary of State last Friday. There was a short article in the Times, and when she was going on about the benefits of being in school and how it's unacceptable to be away from school and children are missing out on time they'll never get back again. And I've never been one who feels that education is best gained in school. Remember, you might have been there. There was an HMI conference a long time ago when we were all gathered together in the days when we were allowed to speak for more than 5 minutes, and to consider how we could improve attendance in failing schools. And people came out with weird and wonderful ideas. I think probably we should fine parents so much that they would die in penury. And somebody suggested we should be giving prizes to children who turn up. And I caused a little bit of a stir by saying, well, yes, we should give prizes, but I'd give prizes to the children who don't come to school. I'd reward them for having the insight and temerity not to waste their lives going to be taught in a school which offers such poor education. Well, once again, my invitation to the Palace Garden Party was taken. But some of my most valued experiences I've had in my life were when I wasn't in school. I remember in the 50s, great aunt of mine was in service, and my mother used to gain a bit more money each spring by going to help her clean this huge house where she was in service. And I had to go with her because it was 20 miles away. And the advantage was that I was allowed to watch television because we didn't have one in those days. But they put me to sit in front of a crushingly boring program called The Wooden Tops. And I thought, well, if this is what television is about, I don't want anything to do with it. And I was about to move out of the room and say I'd had enough when suddenly Richard Dimbleby's voice came on. And we had the most wonderful sight. He was explaining. We were looking at the apostles on the facade of St. Peter's, Rome, and he was saying that this was the first live Eurovision broadcast from Europe, and it was the funeral of Pope Pius XII. So I watched that, absolutely intrigued all the way through. And of course, this was in the pre-Vatican II days, so you had the full works. And I was absolutely enthralled by this. And I learned so much just in watching. I learned about the hierarchical structure of the Roman Catholic Church, history of the papacy, the political status of the Vatican City, the wranglings about what Pope Pius XII's views were and how close or not close he was to Nazism and so on. I learned about the significance of the Requiem and so on. And that information interested me and it stayed with me. And I don't know what was being taught in school that day, and I don't care. It also gave me an ambition, because I came away thinking being Pope would be rather good. Being carried around on one of those chairs would do me fine. I had to change this to becoming Archbishop of Canterbury when I realized you had to be a Catholic to become Pope. But throughout my time at school, I used to elect to stay away when we eventually did have television, whenever anything insignificant was happening, I would excuse myself from school. And my parents knew this. I used to say, I'm just not going to school, fine. So I was able to see the first visit by the head of the Church of England to Rome since the Reformation. I saw the first royal wedding to take place in York Minster when Catherine Worsley married the Duke of Kent. I took it wasn't just television. I took time out to creep out of school to watch Lady Megan Lloyd George give a rousing speech in the middle of the village, and I went to watch the first diesel rail car to go through the middle of Wales. So I used to
you basically used to bunk off when you wanted.
I used to bunk off, and I also used to take time out during school, because during in the 50s, capital punishment was still in operation, and they would announce on the radio in the morning, so and so will be in Pentonville at 12 o'clock or something of this sort. 5 minutes before, I would excuse myself and say I wanted to go to the loo, which was right at the other end of the yard, and nobody could see because it was one of these 19th century buildings. And I used to go out there and I used to silently mark the passing of this soul, which is a strange thing for a small child to do. But of course, some of those were guiltless souls. It was found out to be later. So I learned a vast amount about those kinds of things. And when I went to grammar school, I used to take time out. I didn't used to go to lessons I didn't want to go to, and I renegotiated my program. I got so fed up of the thugs who used to teach me PE and games, that I asked to do Greek instead, and then I was taught by one of the finest, most intelligent, sophisticated gentlemen I've ever come across. And I used to take time out to revise for exams. My form master said, you're never in school before exams. And when I pointed out that I agreed with him and said, but I've been top of the class for the last 12 times, he let it go. So this notion of having all education in school and perpetuating that worries me, because it doesn't take into consideration what else children can have. And it brought home to me when I went to a school in the Northwest on one occasion, and the children, it was a themed visit, so you didn't have to deep dive or worry about how you didn't have to police the teaching of reading or anything of that sort. And there was a child there who was doing different work from the others. And I said, why is this? Oh, because when they went to Blackpool and did their geography field trip, I was in Cairo. And she was so enthusiastic about it, and she'd learned such a vast amount about the pharaohs and heaven knows what else. So I said to the head teacher afterwards, gosh, it was an interesting conversation, that little girl. And she said, oh, how dreadful. She was away for a week, and that really messed up our figures. And if next year they take her away, this is year 5, they take her away during SATs, she's one of our most intelligent children, is going to bring that. And I thought, this woman isn't interested in the education of this child. She's interested in the statistics and maintaining the view or the status of school on the basis of Ofsted's results. So last week I was in London seeing children who must have been bunking off school, being taken around, and they were so intrigued by what they saw.
Mm.
And just standing there looking around, I thought they're learning so much more. What would they be doing otherwise? They'd probably be sitting on a mat surrounded by lots of fussing TAs and parent helpers and God knows what else. They wouldn't be able to see beyond the laurel bushes, which now seem to be springing up in front of those awful things, surrounds to schools. They might as well be in prison. So,
So I think, Aelwyn, I think, Stan, I mean, I don't think you're quite as
I-
radical as that,
I have
but there
I
is
have some
something here, isn't
sympathy
there?
with your view.
Yeah.
I just wonder now these days with it, if a child misses school, we're already saying that's part of their GCSE gone, even though they're 5. But I think it's more to do with a curriculum that is of such structure that we can't be flexible about a child who didn't do that bit.
Mm.
Whereas, I always think, well, if a child arrived at the school and hadn't done the week before, what would we do? We wouldn't sit them separately and teach them for a whole week on what they'd missed the week before, because they'd missed this week then, and then we'd have to and it's over exaggerated.
Yeah.
And I think it gets to me when we get the words, a day off school is this, but hang on, for the coronation we can close all schools for a day.
Absolutely.
That's hundreds of thousands of children missing
Yeah.
school. We must, it must be the end of society as we know it. But I have to say, I've having bunked off for school myself, not for I knew it was grammar school, but not for the glorious things you're talking about. I went to watch Martin Buchan make his debut for United.
Well,
Yeah, but I think the thing for me is that it's as if, if there is a problem with attendance, to me it's always a bit like a shop. The shop, why are customers not coming to the shop? Well, they're probably not, they're not welcoming. The shop's not laid out nicely. They're not selling stuff that I want to buy. It's probably very expensive. All these factors. Well, as a shopkeeper, you start looking at that. But when we look at attendance, no one's saying to me, or I'm not hearing anyone say, do you know what? This curriculum might be so stifling and so dull that people don't want to come to it anymore. And I think for children, older children, particularly those that have gone through primary education into secondary, if they've experienced a really rich primary experience, if they had a rich primary experience, secondary to me would seem like dull as ditch water. They're on, and immediately, even in year 7, you hear head teachers talking about GCSEs. And it was so refreshing yesterday. I went to see a head teacher in, I'll call it out because it was a really great visit, Middleton Tech. And the head teacher said that she'd been at the school a very long time, both as a teacher and then as head. But she said one of the most glorious experiences of the entire year was when the entire year 8s go to France. She said, we used to have it where only 40 went. But she said, well, I wasn't going to have it where we were going to exclude loads of kids from this fantastic experience. So, she said, the big pull is Disney. They all think, oh, we want to go to Disney, but it isn't Disney. That's the final day. It's the visit to the Normandy beaches. It's the visit to Monet's garden. It's then Disney. And she said, this is the richest experience, cultural experience that the children have, and they have it in year 8. And I thought, wow, yeah, well done, that head teacher. I hope you get credit for that, because that for me is what a really exciting curriculum experience is. No kids missed off it, everybody goes, and for me, I think we just need to make the curriculum much more interesting, much more relevant for young people than we've got at the moment. I really do feel as if somebody said to me, sorry, I'm Jack, but also there was a bit of research that came out, somebody referred to it recently, that in primary school, young people are influenced very much by that teacher. It's the same teacher. There's a flexibility and a freedom to that delivery. They go to secondary school, and of course the influence of the individual teacher is lost. So the peer group pressure then exerts itself. And so if the curriculum is dull, then actually, and it may be dull further up, but that dullness then feeds down into children who have just joined. So the sort of the power of the individual, the power of the adult as a leader of curriculum delivery is not as powerful. And so in effect, you know, and they're going through obviously a period in their lives when they're open to these sorts of challenges and to these differences, you know, so that's an interesting sort of thought that it might actually be not beyond our control, but actually we need to look seriously at what are we delivering and how interesting is it? How relevant is it?
I'd agree with most of what you say there, but it worries me that it's all very well that, yes, children will identify with a particular teacher, but that particular teacher needs to be good. And if
Yes.
your child ends up in a class where the teacher doesn't work hard, doesn't know what she or he is doing, then that's the most important waste of a child's life.
Yeah.
And actually, I suppose you make it worse. I suppose don't you by not having any other
Absolutely,
adults to you know to spark them off.
absolutely.
Taking that point though, it does make you feel as though is the secondary curriculum just so focused in on exams that the experience of you know this visit to France, you know this sense of you know being able to adapt curriculum to meet the needs of individual children is simply lost because you know the old Ken Robinson thing, they're put in their little egg boxes and they're processed
Mm.
in their egg boxes along the line, you know, and there's no variation, very little
But
variation from
I
these
think, Frank,
experiences.
if we're honest, that's what's happening to the primary curriculum.
Mm,
Rather than making the secondary curriculum more flexible, we're actually
yeah,
narrowing down or making the structure of the primary curriculum so structured that there is no freedom. And you said before about encouraging children to attend school. I can remember being the butt of everyone's anger because one of the lads when I was in primary school only came because of the football after school, and that was seen as dreadful. That I was, you should stop him from playing if the only reason he comes is because of the football.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
Yeah, there's a real logic in that. So he doesn't attend, but he comes in when there's football on
yeah,
because he
Mm.
likes playing football. But he spends, the day before and the day in school for those days. So I
yeah,
should stop him doing that. Yeah, it's not right that he only comes in for football.
yeah. I think we started on this about attendance and the reasons why some children are not attending. I genuinely think that having spoken to a number of year nines, year tens, they're very quickly working out whether they're going to do well or not. And they know how far behind some of them feel, whether they are or not. But to them, it's just not worth the effort to not get the grade 4. You know, it's simply not worth the time to invest in it. You know, I think
I
they've worked
always
out
remember
that,
a guy from I think it was certainly a Welsh university came to speak to us, and he was talking about competition that it was about boys and girls and how he said the big thing is boys respond to competitiveness, and he said it's a complete fallacy. Boys only get into competitiveness if they think they can win. The
Mm.
moment they don't think they can win, they're switched off. And
mm,
I think that's the case with, we're behind. I'm not going to get the grades. Why
yeah,
would I bother?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
do think the pandemic has got something to do with it because I think most of the thing is, children missed out and the blah, blah, blah. I think children learned that school wasn't everything. And I think some parents learned that as well.
Mm.
And so the bond between school and parents being this is the best place for was broken, and I don't think we've worked hard enough to get it back for the right
yeah,
reasons.
Mm.
What we've done is said you must, it's compulsory, you should,
Yeah.
we'll fine you, instead of saying what are the benefits of coming to school and
yeah.
making school
Mm.
beneficial.
But going back to my shop analogy, businesses, and I think this is relevant, businesses had to go online. You know, so the drive to go online was there before the pandemic, but the
Mm.
pandemic drove businesses who were lazy and were just relying on stuff. You know, I mean, John Lewis is a good example. You know, their online program now, or their online facility, is significantly better than it was pre-pandemic, you know. And in a way, what happened was people chose not to go there because it was, you couldn't go to the shop. The website was rubbish. You couldn't flick back and forward as you can with many other shopping websites. So they had to improve that. I'm not sure that there's been sufficient reflection of what learning looks like now that we've come out of the pandemic. It's as if, the Spielman thing, we're getting back, we're going to do it the way we did it before. Things are not, but things have changed. The children are learning online. Children did learn online. They might not have learned in the same way. And I'm not saying that online learning is better than face to face, but actually there was a reflection about, well, how have things changed? Yeah, I just don't think we're into that discussion at all.
And I think Ofsted also.
Frank. Sorry. What?
Go on.
I'm going to say that I think Ofsted lost an opportunity during the pandemic because basically there was nothing happening. When I retired, it was just at the beginning of the pandemic, and I suggested I was working part-time, and I said, well, what do I do in these hours that I'm being paid? And nobody could really think of anything to do. And they suggested, I could produce something about looked after children. Well, I'd already produced that a previous year. And I've been looking at the records of two schools, one in Liverpool and two schools that my parents went to. And the school in Liverpool was evacuated to both those schools in Mid Wales, and the amount of involvement on HMI by HMI in those schools, all three schools, in ensuring that there was continuity in children's experience was quite amazing. Something I was quite an eye opener to me. But when you think about it, HMI and Ofsted weren't involved in ensuring there was, except latterly, in ensuring there was continuity. So we lost an opportunity. And I was talking to an historian friend recently, and he said that probably there was less disruption to children's education during the Second World War than there was at the time of the pandemic. And that's a sadness.
Yes. I think just to move it on, because how long is it now? 40 minutes. What's caught my eye this week is the personal thing, really. I'm a big Southend United fan, and I have been since I was at secondary school. It was the local club, and some of the players used to come down and train at us and what have you. So it was a close tie. And over the last few years, the club has been in a terrible state. And even last week, there was a High Court hearing because, believe it or not, the legal firm who had fought against a previous winding up order had not been paid. So the legal firm who had represented the club in the High Court were now wanting their money. There is a route out of this. So it looks as though a consortium have actually been paying all the wages since October, which amounts to about £4 million. And they hopefully will get their money back when the winding up order is completed, because there's a big ground development, a site out of Southend, which is going to deliver sort of quite a big sizable amount of money. But anyway, what happened was this week, the manager of Southend United was voted the National League Manager of the Year, even though he didn't win the league. The side didn't get promoted. The reason why he got that award was because for large chunks of the season, players weren't being paid, office staff weren't being paid, he wasn't being paid. And even though all of that was happening, and they opened the season unsure whether or not the ground would be fit to play, this brought the community together, because at the heart of it, the club is a community resource, and as such, it's the attendance figures at Southend have been incredible, and they've also had thousands going to away matches. In fact, I think nearly 1,000 went to Gateshead for the away match there. So Kevin Maher was made given freedom of the city of Southend this year, And I think that it goes to show that, true leadership, gets to your heart, and people were turning up, didn't want to get, they had mortgages to pay, but players were still turning up, even though they could have got a contract with another club, but they chose to stay. And I think it's amazing achievement, and just sort of makes me, wish that there was more leaders like that, of some of the larger clubs that we have, who are doing it for what I think is the right reason. The problem now is that he's highly regarded, so other clubs are going to be hovering around him and offer him loads of money. But anyway, we'll see where we go. But yeah, I'm delighted that an honourable man like Kevin Maher gets this award. Right. Well, we're near the end. I think that I also went to Bradford this week, which I really enjoyed. So I'm reflecting on that and want to thank everybody in Keighley for their time this week. So thank you, Aelwyn, and thank you, Stan. Aelwyn, we're going to have you back again. I hope you don't mind.
No,
But so
no,
for
I've got
those of
nothing else to
you,
do.
those of you, if our health holds out, we'll and the Frankistan chat continues, we'll have Aelwyn back in 2025, and I'll sort a date out with you after this recording. So thank you, Aelwyn. Thank you, Stan. And all being well, we've got Kendra on next week, Stan.
All right.
So Kendra Allen, one of our who's been a big fan of us, our chats for many years, is going to be our guest next week. So look forward to seeing her and to seeing you again, Aelwyn. And thank you, Stan. Have a great weekend.
Thanks very much. Same to
Bye,
you.
folks. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.